Did anyone hear from Jack? No?
I did not hear anything.
Anybody have reports tonight? Hands up.
Nope.
Bob, you have a report?
I do not, Chris.
Okay. Andy? John?
No,
All right, I'll fly through that then. Rob, how about you?
Not tonight.
Okay. That's right, I gotta get you some assignments, don't I?
Kristen, can you unshare your screen? There we go. Thank you.
Jack's logging in right now.
I just got a message that my internet is unstable. I might have to go tell my daughter to stop watching Dexter.
At least it didn't say you're unstable.
That's a given, Penny. Liz?
Oh boy, Dexter.
It's a great show.
There he is. All right, let's get this show on the road. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular virtual meeting of the Winnetka Village Council for November 5th, 2020. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please turn off or mute your cell phones or other electronic devices. And who looks pledge worthy tonight? Jack, how about you?
All righty.
Hey, Chris, I need to call the roll first.
Oh, ask Rob, oh, I'm sorry, it's right here in big bright yellow. Ask Rob to do a roll call for attendance.
Trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes?
trustee Quirk,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
and President Ritz.
Yes. All right, now we can now move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jack will lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge of allegiance, to the flag,
Flag
of the United States of America,
of America
to the
and
republic
to the republic for which it stands,
for which it
one
stands,
nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with
with
liberty
liberty
justice.
and
and
justice for all.
justice.
For all. Thank you, everyone. Rob, you want to go ahead and do a quorum check?
Certainly. As you can see, November is a full month. Next week, the study session is dedicated to budget review. Everybody plan to make that meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
November 17th is a regular meeting where we'll get back to regular course of business. Does that meeting look okay for everyone? Or any?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the 19th is the third special budget meeting. That's a Thursday. That still look okay for everybody?
The 19th, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then finally, November 23rd study session on stormwater financing.
That's Monday, yes.
Yes,
That's a Monday?
yes, it is.
Okay, I have one, I'll make sure, I'll try and change it.
Okay, that one was pre-polled. I
Yep.
had,
No, absolutely.
okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Kristen, is there any public comment that's been received through email, or is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about an item that is not on tonight's agenda?
President Rents, we did not receive any advance written comment related to the meeting. I do see in attendance, we have one person in the room marked visitor. I will press allow to talk and ask visitor to unmute if they would like to make a comment. Visitor has remained muted. So
Love
Peter,
Zoom.
should we take that as no comment if visitor has remained muted?
I think that's a fair thing to do.
Okay, thank you. So we're good there, Kristen?
Yes.
Okay. Reports, I've already polled the trustees and I believe no one has a report. Jack, I don't think you were here when I was polling. You have a
Yeah,
report, Jack? Okay. Village attorney,
No report.
village manager,
No report.
and village president. I have no report tonight. All right, approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes?
trustee Caladarchi.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, the consent agenda. I'll ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of village council meeting minutes for October 20th, 2020, regular virtual meeting minutes, and October 28th, 2020 virtual, special virtual meeting minutes. Approval of the warrant list dated October 16th through the 29th, 2020, in the amount of $944,340.92. That is the consent agenda.
Somebody, please.
So we need a motion.
Oh.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Rob?
Trustee Lampier,
Yep.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes?
trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Awesome. That motion carries. We'll move on to number 8, budget review. Tonight is the first of 3 budget review sessions for the 2021 village budget. Finance Director Tim Sloth will begin with a budget overview. Here's the way we're going to do this tonight, guys, is I'd like to, if you can just jot down your questions during each individual's presentations. I'd like them to get through their whole presentation, and then we can come back and drill down to whatever level we deem necessary. But I'd like them to go through their whole presentation first, and then have us come back after they're 100% complete. With respect to the capital plan, I was a bit confused, so I checked with Rob. Evidently, the way we're going to work this is they're going to give us an overview of the capital plan. And I guess the best way to put it is, we should try to stay at 50,000 feet up for tonight's discussion on the plan as a document. And then we'll be able to drill down into each of the tabs, which I'm pretty anxious to do, when each individual department gives their budget presentation, and we'll review the capital plan at that time. Is that right, Rob?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to flow as freely as we were able to before, but
Yeah.
The 5 years got a lot of stuff in it that I know I want to ask questions on, but I guess I'll just have to wait as each individual department comes up. So
Yep, makes sense.
So with that said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tim to kick things off tonight.
Okay, thank you, President Rentz, and good evening, council. We have a brief presentation to go through with our budget proposal. You can go to the next slide, Kristen. For today's meeting, again, we are going to review a overview of the budget as a whole, including the key policy initiatives, along with the tax levy. We'll go into the 2021 capital plan, again, as an overview with detailed questions on that and presentations on capital as part of the departmental presentations. And then police and fire will be presenting their budgets tonight as well. To kick it off, the budget, obviously the big impact is COVID-19 to the village's finances as a whole. It's going to cut across 2020 and 2021 to update where we're at to date. In 2020, the current economic forecasts are slating for a GDP decline of about 6.5% nationally on an annual basis. Locally in Winnetka, we're seeing reduced revenues and also increased expenses, which so far the increased expenses have been manageable. And if you recall back in May 2020 and again in August 2020, we presented more detailed forecasts on where we were at. But in May, we identified $3.9 million in expense reductions to offset a projected decline in revenue. And so far that's held up pretty well. We're doing better than that. So those expense reductions that we identified back in May will last us through the year. We are tracking all costs in our liability fund and are in the process of seeking federal and state funding through FEMA and the Federal CARES Act. For 2021 and putting together this budget, the challenge of COVID is highly related to the elevated uncertainty around the economy and what that is going to do to our revenues. But we've put together what we feel are conservative yet realistic revenue estimates for 2021, and we'll be prepared and continue to monitor to develop and implement any revised financial plans if necessary. So if the revenue doesn't materialize as we go through 2021, we will meet like we did this past year with identified adjustments to the financial plan. Slide. So overall, the 2021 budget is balanced in that operating expenditures are fully funded by operating revenues. The budget does not rely on any one-time revenue sources or the use of fund balance to fund operating expenses. The village is home rule, but we continue to act like a non-home rule entity for the purposes of the tax levy. Utility rates are set using a cost of service analysis. And operating expenses increases are generally and should be generally equal to revenue increases. And we have a commitment to making 100% of the actuarially recommended contribution for public safety pensions. Capital is funded on a pay-as-you-go basis wherever possible. And budget amendments, so far, the village has avoided budget amendments wherever possible, and we do include a contingency in the budget. And finally, fund balance, net asset policy, we do maintain minimum end-of-year fund balance targets, which are set for each fund. For 2021, we're proposing a flat property tax increase, 0% for existing residents. This is the 7th year in a row we're able to do that. But the tax levy does capture 0.76% in estimated new growth. So the year-to-year annual budget difference is $179. And what this is a 2.1% increase in expected fees for a typical Winnetka resident. And that's on an annual basis, so $179 a year. And again, it funds public safety pensions per the Illinois state statute with a conservative 6.25% rate of return. Moving on to more key budget initiatives. In stormwater, the 2021 capital budget totals $6.17 million. Of that, vision projects total $5.3 million. And we are planning to have a more detailed financing strategy on November 23rd. The Business District Revitalization Fund, 2021 capital budget of $1.9 million. And this fund is funded by a $1.1 million property tax levy in the general fund, which is transferred to the Business District Revitalization, along with a $550,000 transfer from the general fund as well. In the Sanitary Sewer Fund, 2021 capital budget of $550,000. We did an inflow and infiltration survey a couple of years back that identified $3.3 million in rehabilitation projects. And so far, Steve will go into more detail when he presents on this one, but we've been able to make all the critical and high repairs. And now we're focusing on the medium repairs that were identified in that study. And for the total 5-year CIP in this fund of $1.55 million, fully funded on a pay-as-you-go basis. For utility funding, we're implementing rate recommendations outlined in the electric rate study. That rate increase for 2021 is 2.2% for the residential base rate. Also implements rate recommendations outlined in the water rate study, which is an increase of 2021 of 8.5%. And sanitary sewer fund rate increase of 2021 is 5%. And the refuse fund is fully funded via user charges, no property taxes, and no suggested rate increases. And there are no other increases to existing fees, either permits, vehicle stickers, parking, et cetera, are proposed for 2021. The budget adjusts aging infrastructure, $7.3 million towards infrastructure, with $2.88 million dedicated towards the electric plant and power grid, $2.34 million in roadways, sidewalk, bridges, and parking lots, $2.49 million in water main renewal in conjunction with the Public Works annual road program. Where possible, we try to tie these projects together so that the water main gets replaced at the time a street gets replaced. And finally, total 2021 capital investment of almost $17.8 million. Again, the 2021 budget is balanced. This chart shows a summary of the entire budget. And in 2021, you can see operating revenues of $7.1 million over operating expenditures of $60.6 million, with a net operating income of $9.5 million, which is fully dedicated towards capital of $17.6 million. Next slide. Moving on to the general fund. General fund revenues are at almost $27 million, which is down 1.9%. The key changes for the general fund is tax levy, $114,000. That's the new growth capture. Permit revenue, we're budgeting down $50,000. Intergovernmental revenue, this consists of sales tax, income tax, use tax. We're budgeting that down in total about $302,000. Charges for services down almost $100,000. Natural gas and telecoms tax down about 90,000, and then interest earnings down 97,000. So in total, the 2021 budget for the general fund has about $500,000 less in revenue than what was budgeted in 2020. Operating expenditures are down about 4.12%. This chart shows the operating expenditures for each of the departments. If you see that in total, the 4.12% includes transfers. And most all departments are down with their budgets this year compared to last year, with the finance department up slightly for the year. Moving on to the property taxes, this chart shows the allocation of property taxes paid in 2019. The red box is the village portion, which totals about 12.6%, 12.59% of the total dollar. So every dollar, 12.59%, 9 cents goes towards the village. This is down slightly compared to the year before, where it was 12.61. And you can see the big drivers of your property tax dollars are the public schools, Winnetka Public Schools, and New Trier High School. For the property tax extension limitation law, this is the formal name of the tax cap. As a home rule entity, we are not bound by the tax cap, but we have in 2005, when we became a home rule entity, there was a pledge at that time put in place that the village will adhere to the tax cap. And the village has, in fact, it has adhered to the tax cap and has actually exceeded where we would be if we were following the tax cap. So for this year, it's a 0% taxpayer increase, only capturing new growth for the 7th year in a row. The proposed tax levy for 2020 totals $15,161,834. And that levy is $2.4 million less than what the PTEL or the tax cap limit is. And since 2005, the village has levied a full $10.75 million under the tax cap. So it's more than adhered to that commitment. The 2020 property tax levy will be set in December 2020 in conjunction with final approval of the budget. This chart shows a history of property tax changes since 2000 and also demonstrates where we are at compared to a CPI increase. So if you look at the bottom right of the slide, the CPI increase since 2000 is 52.2%. The village of Winnetka's tax levy has increased 44% since that time. So it has been increased less than the inflation factor, whereas most other taxing districts have been beyond that 52%. So in total, for all taxing districts, the tax levy's gone up about 97% since 2000, with the village only increasing 44%. Moving on to the capital plan overview. Capital plan is in a separate binder for your binders. It's the smaller binder. 5-year plan, 2021 through 2025, broken out by fund with cash flows shown for each individual fund. We include a detailed project sheet for each item, and to be included in the capital plan, a project must total at least $50,000. And finally, within your binder, in the front cover, there's a separate spreadsheet that has kind of a summary of the entire capital plan on just a few pages. Proposed capital plan in 2021, about $17.8 million, increasing to $31 million in 2023, and then back down in 2025 to $20 million. And this chart shows us the significant projects for 2021. The general fund, about $2.4 million. Other key initiatives is the stormwater fund, $6.2 million. Water main improvements of $3 million, and electric, $2.8 million. And finally, downtown, $1.9 million dedicated towards downtown revitalization. So overall, the 2021 annual budget is fiscally sound. Operating budgets are balanced, again, meaning operating expenditures, those are annual expenditures are funded by annual operating revenues. We maintain appropriate reserves, adequate staffing to provide for core village services, and we are continuing to modernize and invest in village infrastructure. So with that, if there's any questions at this point, that's concludes the overview of the 2021 budget.
Hey, Tim, do you want to go into any questions on tab 1, just sort of some of the tables in there and so on, or how do you want to do that?
If you have any specific questions, yeah, we can get those out now, and we'll try and answer them here on the spot. If there's anything we might need to do a little more research on, we'll gather it for the next meeting.
Have at 'em, Bob.
You might have the answers. I'm on page. So is that okay, Chris?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, I'm just kind of going past the narrative and getting to page 12, where you show some, the detail on the budget and so on.
Sure.
So just a couple of quick questions. I think you probably have the answers here. And sometimes I look at I know you're comparing the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget. I also look at the 2020 estimate just to see, I know 2020 is a really strange year for us. And maybe that's not a good run rate, obviously. But on the expenditures, just on the services and supplies, and it's probably buried in here somewhere and I just don't see it. But compared to 2020 actual, the estimate, you're showing services and supplies going from 20 million to 22.5 million. Any idea, what we took out of there in 2020 that's back in and then some?
So in 2020 budget, 21.9 million, and then it goes to 22.57 in 2021. The increase in the budget is related to a number of different factors. It's not a one big project, but just some of the things that contribute to that increase would be the increase in purchase power in the electric fund of 125,000. Some costs in the downtown revitalization fund that are technically part of a capital project, but technically picked up as a engineering service for 143,000 is another thing that's increasing. Some IT.
Tim, I guess I'm looking at the estimate. I'm looking at the estimate for 2020, not the budget. So the estimate of the actual service and supplies was 20 million.
Yeah, we're
budgeting 22.5.
Yeah, I would have a better answer comparing budget to budget, I would have to see specifically, do a little more of an analysis to see the comparison between the 2021 budget and the 2020 estimate. I know as part of COVID, we identified a number of cuts to the budget.
Right.
So the budget is coming in less, and a lot of those cuts were in services and supplies. But I would have to dig a little deeper to provide a more detailed answer.
So I would think that we, Trustee Dearborn, we would go back to the budget reduction list and tie that out. That's why the estimate is less, because of the budget adjustments that we made in May, primarily.
Yeah, no, I that's what I assume, Rob, and I'm just wondering, if any of those can be captured on a run rate, going forward. I don't know what those items were.
Yeah.
But it's 2.5 million year over year, actual versus budget. It's a pretty big dollar amount. So I'd be kind of curious on that. And then on the debt service, on the couple lines lower, how is our new financing arrangement working in is that part of this debt service?
It would not. The new financing arrangement's not going to be reflected in the budget until 2022. So the 2021 is going to have the same budget as if we continued the bonds that we had, because those bonds technically do not get fully refunded until 2021. They get put into escrow. So we have to make the 2021 portion of the payments as we normally would, and then it's the 2022 through 2046 tranches that technically get refunded.
Okay, so we have the same, so there's no reduction for 2021. Huh, okay.
Yeah, I had a similar question earlier when we were building the budget, Bob. And
Yeah.
I think, Tim, I recall Kevin saying there was a timing question because the first, some of those debt service payments are early in 21, and that therefore it gets captured into that year. Is that fair, Tim?
Yeah, exactly. And the amount gets, technically it hits our budget and hits our books in 2021, the payment as normally scheduled. So even though it's, they have 2013 and 14 bonds will be refunded. It's, you know, the funds are held in an escrow. So it still basically reflects on our 2021 budget.
Yeah. Initially, I thought it was going to be cleared in
Okay.
this year or realized in this year, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Then the only other comment I had is, you know, I love the chart on the next page. Of course, I like the dollar broken out, but I think it's the one above there on page 13 that itemizes, you know, the average growth rate of a homeowner cost, including all services. That's a very powerful piece of information, I think. You know, you're talking 2.3% annual increases over the last 5 years, which includes infrastructure spending, you know, police, fire, refuge, you know, you name it. And that's, I think that would compare well to most municipalities. I just make that point.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I got for the moment here.
To tag on what Bob was saying, I was looking at those 3.9 in expense reductions, and how much of that can be sustainable expense reductions going forward. I mean, how much of it is painful and how much of it can be sustainable. That was one thought. And I don't know if you have an answer for that now, but whenever, I just wanted to get an idea.
Yeah.
As far as that's one question. Question two, as far as what Bob was saying about the broken up dollar, the tax levy analysis, how many years did you say we've held the line pretty much?
7 years.
7. I'd be curious, can we get a view of the other, the schools in Winnetka Park District and others that have, what their rate of increase has been over those 7 years?
Yeah, we could gather that information and present.
I'm just trying to understand apples to apples, how we compare and as we talk about increases and they talk about increases, what the heck that really means.
Sure.
Okay, that's 2. And those are the 2 ones for right now. Oh, also the 5.3 Envision projects. Just remind me what's considered a vision project again.
Those are projects that are the western watershed of the village. Those are what we call the vision projects. That
Okay.
includes the Cook County Forest Preserve project, Duke Child Field, Little Duke, the golf course, and the Crow Island storage project.
Okay, thank you.
That's the overview of those projects.
Got it.
Tim, can I ask you another question? I'm sorry, and anyone else jump ahead of me here, I apologize. On page 16, and we've talked about this a little bit, Rob, I know you and I have, and so on, and Tim, on the pensions. Can you just clarify again? So in this budget, we are transitioning to what we know, I guess, to be the new formula in terms of the 90% funding target that we're moving into for 2040, I guess.
Right.
And we're allocating those savings to capital. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So
And
Go ahead.
Go on, Tim, I'm sorry.
So the total decrease in public pension costs is 972,000. That's the decrease in the property tax levy from going to the new consolidated funds, the 2040 mandate versus the 2035. So that provides 972,000. And on the bottom of page 16, that's what that little chart tries to show, is how we're keeping that funding dedicated towards capital.
So, and Rob, you help me on this one a little bit. The idea is that those savings, that we're not just doing that theoretically on a one-year basis, that those savings that will accrue over the years on an annual basis, we're going to try to capture those ongoing savings and allocate that to capital, as opposed to bringing those savings back into the operating budget. Is that
Correct. That's
is that
correct. Yes, it is correct. So,
And how are we going to? And
so
this is
a
getting
lot of
ahead of
this
ourselves. How are you going to do that?
yeah, so it's more of a budget exercise than an accounting exercise. So one
Right.
example that might point to would be when we transitioned the refuse program into a fee program and allocated the 1.1 million tax levy. That was allocated to business district revitalization along with the other transfer. And we protected that revenue to sustain the investment in our downtowns. The same thing would be done here, is that each year we know the difference in the pension funding based on these targets, and that amount is going to be allocated to capital. This year it's general fund because the general fund needs the most help, but in future years, it's very likely it could go to stormwater or other need projects that pop up. So we want to be able to protect it and not allocate it to service supplies, salaries, those sort, not to operating, but to purely capital.
So future budgets, you'll try to have some line item that would identify.
It's
Those
embedded in
savings
it's embedded in the general fund this year, but if it ends up being
Yeah.
transferred to another fund, it's going to be easier to track that way. If
Yeah,
that makes
I think
sense.
that's important too. Yeah, I think it's important to, and you've, I think you've said it in here somewhere, but I think that's a pretty important discipline practice to memorialize in some way, because that is a savings. We're going to be honoring, of course, and funding our pensions as we always would, but this is a fairly substantial savings that, if that's going to be our budgeting practice going to capital, I think we should, make that very clear, that that's going to be an ongoing practice.
It is. Thank you.
And then did I have some? And then Chris, how do you want to talk about the capital, the capital plan? I'm a little confused how we're going to.
So is
Tim's
I.
talking about capital. What's that?
You mind?
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, sure. So tonight isn't meant to, to avoid questions on capital. If you have kind of bigger picture questions on capital, certainly we want to be able to take those tonight, and or questions that may need follow-up for the subsequent evenings. But we will get it, each department, like we have every other year before, will go over their capital spend, whether that's in the water fund, the electric fund, business district, wherever it may be showing up. Police and fire, what you'll see tonight, they have some capital to look at as well, not as significant as some of the others, but so the departments will have their, and their funds will have that level of detail. But if you have questions on capital, let us know and we can do our best with it tonight.
Well, and I'm sure that other people have looked at the plan, and I just want to understand, and I know that and Rob, you and I had a conversation, and we're just really addressing 2021 capital, and I get that. But the 5-year plan, I love this insert, this 4-page, looking out 5 years and so on. And I guess, and of course, the big elephant in the room, we all know it, is stormwater. So I guess my questions on stormwater, and I'm not trying to get ahead to the November 23rd meeting by any means here, but on the last page on the 5-year capital plan, there are a few small projects and so on for 2021, a little bit going forward, but then there's sort of a, in a way, there are no projects, there are no other projects village-wide related to stormwater other than the vision. Is that realistic? I mean, won't there be other neighborhood projects that come up that we should, have in this plan?
Go ahead, Chris.
Bob, when you dig through the budgets, you'll see that Steve has budgeted in the public works in the public works budget, a lot of upfront work for east side projects as well that's scheduled for 2021. There's a lot of engineering. I think he's budgeted $75,000 to begin those studies on the east side projects as well.
And
Okay.
there's also,
I stumbled over it last night. That's the only reason why I'm answering, because I remember finding it and thinking, oh, there it is. And there's some ravine stuff in there as well. So if you dig, you'll find it. But I had some questions on that as well. But then, as Rob helped me understand, I'll just save those until Steve is here and can answer them.
Right.
he has
So-
$100,000 a year in 2022, 23, and 24 in neighborhood scale stormwater improvements that's outside of the vision projects as well. So I think that's kind of a placeholder for any other stormwater that comes up.
So
So is that a realistic, and Chris, you may know this better than anybody, I guess. Is that realistic for the and I'm just thinking, I always like a fully loaded budget, but for the non-vision related stormwater expenditures, is it realistic to only have 100,000 a year for subsequent years or not?
based upon what we know right now, we have neighborhood scale. There's also mitigation zone improvements with our smaller scale that are loaded in there. There's green infrastructure that's loaded in there as well. So based upon the data that we have now, we think our 5-year look is reflects what we know. So that east side
Mhm.
study is loaded in 21. When that study is completed, we will know more about what those costs will be. And then we'll start to load those in and share them with council to see, your appetite for funding them. We also keep in our infrastructure, we think it's from a good budgeting practice to show a 5-year plan, but we do have schedules that go beyond that. Certainly on water mains, we have schedules that go out many, many years. And we're, adjusting those to bring them into focus for a 5-year look. But stormwater, there's more to come. The town has aging infrastructure. There's issues on the east side of town. There's some issues up on the, further north and east too. So, there'll be more. It's just a matter of, getting those fully identified rather than putting in a plug number that we can't justify.
Okay. And then these numbers that we're looking at here will sort of dovetail into the November 23rd numbers. So we're, in terms of the vision project, the stormwater project overall.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
this would be one of the frameworks we'll show you on the 20th.
Yeah. Got it. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, great work, Tim and Rob, and I'm looking forward to getting down to the weeds. Very happy, 7th year flat. I like to see that. We're accomplishing some great things in terms of supporting businesses and getting stormwater done. One thing I was thinking about that would be nice, and I don't think we should have done it for this budget, but looking at next year's budget, is to start baking into this overview a narrative of intragovernmental savings or savings achieved through intragovernmental cooperation. I think we should make that kind of like a standing section in future years. We put in place in the last year some things that are going to save a lot of money, for New Trier, the stormwater going under Duke Child. So that way, when people look like at the expense, the cost for a resident from the village, they should realize that in fact, the village is helping to lower their costs, whether it's for New Trier because of Duke Child's District 36, because of what we're doing at Kerr Island, the Park District, because of the golf course that we're going to help build. And these cost savings are really substantial. We're talking millions and millions of dollars. And, that's just, to the extent anyone watches these things and thinks about, what is the village doing to save even more money? I think because we have such a good team in place, we've done a lot to manage kind of within. And the big savings to be achieved in these future years are these intragovernmental cooperation opportunities. And you can see it when you look at how we've stayed flat and the other bodies have continued to go up and up. I mean, there's a room for us to achieve savings for residents through that kind of cooperation. So I'd like to see kind of like a standing narrative in future years that just kind of tracks that. Because I think if we track it, we're likely to encourage future councils to keep doing it.
Yeah, Trustee Kraft, that makes sense. And certainly, capture it and memorialize it so it's not lost somewhere in the books. We also have tracked other intergovernmental efforts that have realized savings, whether that is, sharing services with other municipalities, right? Where we provide fire inspection services to Glencoe and to Northfield and to Kenilworth. Consolidation of services as well has been another savings. But with respect to right here in Winnetka, I think your point's well taken. And Tim, that should be on your follow-up list for next year's transmittal.
But
Great work though, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Kristen, do you want to ask if the visitor has any questions on this first part of the presentation?
Yes. So visitor in the room, I am asking you to unmute if you'd like to comment on this part of the presentation. And visitors remained muted, President Rentz.
Gotcha. Well, then we'll move forward. All right, who's next?
I think the police department would be next.
Great. Let's bring Mark on board.
Everybody see and hear me okay?
Go for it, Mark.
Okay.
Hi, Chief.
Good evening, President Rintz and council members. It's my pleasure to present the 2021 budget for the police department. Before I begin, we have two very important members of the police department staff that are with us on the call tonight, and that is our Administrative Services Manager, Carrie Kaup, and our Deputy Chief of Police, Brian O'Connell. I want to acknowledge both of them, not just for the work that they did on the budget, but also the work they do day in and day out at the police department. They are truly elite talent, and I'm really grateful to work with both of them. And we get a lot done working together, and I just wanted everybody to know how important they are to our staff and to the village.
Thank you.
So with that, next slide, please. So as you look at our organizational chart, no changes at all to the structure of the department. We currently remain at 35 and a half full-time equivalents. We do have currently 5 vacancies across the organization, both on the sworn side of the house and the civilian side of the house. We are in process working very closely with HR to fill those vacancies. Next slide, please. So as we look back at this past year, we're really happy to report that we were able to successfully get our building repurposing completed, which was our capital plan for 2020. This included renovating and expanding an equipment room, and it also allowed us to create an office for our social worker. So that went really well. Also, you've heard me talk in previous budget presentations about the need to implement some important technology. We were able to accomplish that this year as well. In July, we went live with our electronic crash reporting. And then we've recently developed an electronic platform that's going to allow the issuance of parking citations and local citations. This system is going to integrate quite nicely with our existing records management system. Another thing we're really excited about that we were able to get done this year, and it was at no cost, was the creation of our business liaison officer specialty assignment. And what was really kind of exciting about this was it allowed us to work interdepartmentally with our economic development coordinator, Liz Deschent. Josh Perez, our officer, has worked closely with Liz, visiting the different businesses and communicating information to them. Obviously, COVID made it a little bit more of a challenge, and it was somewhat delayed this year, but they have been able to get off the ground and work together, and we're really excited about this partnership that we've got going with it. Also, as you can imagine, having to train our personnel is essential. There's a lot of training requirements for all of our officers, and we had an outdated software system that we needed to upgrade. We were able to go to a cloud-based solution that cost us less than $700 a year to have. With COVID, just like everyone else, we had significant challenges that we had to overcome to make sure that we were going to continue to provide a high level of service 24/7, 365. We were able to successfully do that. And finally, as you know, we did have a few protests that occurred over the summer, some very large crowds on one occasion, and I'm proud to say that we were able to manage those incidents, those gatherings, without any incidents. Next slide, please. So as we look ahead to 2021, our building was last renovated, significantly renovated in 1997, structurally speaking. So the HVAC system has really gone beyond its useful life. We've had significant repairs to this system in the last several years. So we had planned for this. It is our capital expenditure for the year. We have 5 rooftop units that have to be replaced, along with some other improvements to it. And based on the research that we did ahead of time, we're confident that the $150,000 will be enough money to make the improvements that we need to make. Another goal that we have is we currently have been using uniform crime reporting. This is a means of reporting crime data that's been going on dating back to 1930. So it's time to transition to NIBRS. This is going to be a new system that'll provide more data elements and provide for more accurate and thorough reporting. As I mentioned earlier about the vacancies that we have, we are looking to hire 3 new police officers and get them into basic academy training in January, and then get them through field training and ultimately on solo patrol later next year. Certainly, you know, a lot of talk about the need for professionalism, you know, in policing. You know, I'm very proud of the organization that we have and the officers that serve in our department. Having said that, we always want to look to sharpen the saw and continue to look for ways to get better and be more professional. I'm already actively researching ways to do that for next year. Speaking of personnel, we do have a sergeant's list that will expire next year, later on in the fall. We'll be working with human resources to conduct a promotional testing process and establish a new list. And then finally, as always, an ongoing goal of ours to reinforce our crime prevention and our community relations efforts. Hopefully things will get better with COVID, and we can continue to get back out into the community and have more face-to-face contact with people, which we always enjoy doing. Next slide, please. So overall, as we look at the budget for 2021, we're coming in at just over 7.5 million. This is a decrease of 4.2%, in large part because we did have retirements and personnel turnover. but a 4.2% decrease. We did scour through our budget. We did still come up with over $7,000 to cut out of supplies and services. And then two large drivers that we do look at for next year is we are going into year 5, our 5th year of a 7-year contract that we have with Glenview Public Safety Dispatch. That's a fixed increase cost there of just over $20,000, 4.2%. And then finally, we do pay for body armor for all of our officers. And that body armor has an expiration date of 5 years. So it's a mandatory 5-year replacement cycle. So you will see that we've got an increase there to $16,000. The good news with that is we do apply for a federal grant every year. And on average, we get back, roughly 40 to 45% of that cost for the body armor. So those are the highlights as we look ahead for 2021. So with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions for Mark? No questions for Mark? I will say I'm a bit astounded by the fact that our budget for 2021 is down $500,000 in raw salary from the 2020 budget. I guess that just, it's a fairly profound change in 1 year, and obviously it shows that we had a very aging population in the police department. I'm just surprised that we can save $500,000 as a result of that. Was there anything else that factored into that, Mark, or is it just turnover?
Well, we had a sergeant retire, and then we also had a 30-plus year veteran a patrol officer retire. So they were, at the top of the salary range there. We had a senior records clerk, a record specialist that retired, and a part-time CSO left, and then one patrol officer who went on to the State Department. So pretty significant turnover.
Wow. $500,000 is a lot of money.
Is there a way to forecast that as far as people? I know we don't know exactly or when there are people retiring, but is that how sustainable that is? Will the other retirements that will, favorably impact the budget, or there's no way to forecast that?
Well, when we build a budget each year, we will do a personnel analysis, and we'll talk about it. And if we know that someone either has, told us that, hey, they're looking to retire in a certain year, or we think there's a strong likelihood that somebody may retire, we'll note that in the budget and plan for it. So there's, of course, it can be a little bit of a moving target, but yes, we do try and project that.
Okay.
And we undertake succession planning in all departments as well. There is some uncertainty as to when certain people will move on, but we try to factor in our best estimates as we look at those schedules.
It should be noted too that line item that you're seeing, that 500,000, the salaries and benefits, so that accounts for the pension fund savings as well. That's really a key driver to that being down. The turnover, the changing of the workforce certainly helps, but the key driver is definitely the pension savings.
Gotcha. Thanks, Tim. John, were you waving your hand before?
No, I have no questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead, Penny.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so Chief, in terms of your equipment and capital stock, et cetera, are you, what's on the wish list that's not in the capital budget looking out? And now I'd probably ask the same thing to your compatriot following you here, but is there anything, that the police department doesn't have that it needs, that, so we can stay on top of our game at the highest level?
Not from a supply and services point of view. The biggest help that I could ask for from the community right now, quite honestly, is for people to lock their cars. Seriously, take their fobs out of their cars, lock them up. I mean, that's the biggest challenge that we're really facing is stopping people from becoming victims. And, you know, we're doing everything we can to patrol out there, and you can't be everywhere all the time. But back to your question, Trustee Dearborn, no, we do a good job of planning for replacement equipment, and we're in good shape.
Great.
It should be
How about-
noted, the for squad cars that we did used to replace 3 a year, and we did go down to 2 to try and tighten the belt last year, and Mark continued that for this year. So that's not quite a capital expenditure.
I see.
That is, you know, we are getting light on the replacement of the squad cars.
Do we have, as far as, Chief, as far as surveillance equipment, as far as cars coming, like, for instance, where a lot of the crime comes from, coming off the highways or on the main, I guess, is that in the plan? Is that budgeted, or is this something we wouldn't, or would or wouldn't do? I guess I'm looking at ways to more high-tech, give you guys a high-tech view of prevention.
So, you know, there is some ongoing discussion, you know, that's going on, you know, right now about ways that we can use technology to try and combat, you know, this problem that's it's not just a Winnetka problem, it's a regional problem. But yes, there are discussions about that, and you know, it's something that potentially we're exploring it. It's potentially things that could be done, you know, without hurting the budget.
Penny?
Yes, I have a question relative to, as the national conversation about policing goes on, and the discussion about how the police department is often tasked with mental health services, and you know, knowing that we do have a part-time social worker, wondering, you know, as you're thinking ahead and thinking about the challenges that our police force has had in terms of helping out with those kinds of calls, which are more in the social services end rather than in the, you know, criminal justice end of things. Have you all been thinking about that at all? Do you have any vision in terms of what we might do as a council to support the department in the village and those kinds of services?
You know, a lot of that really goes into training. Of course, the police get called many
Right.
times to situations that are not necessarily criminal in nature, because nobody knows who else to call.
Right.
But part of that goes into the de-escalation training, you know, that the verbal judo training that our officers receive. You know, sometimes when you see things go wrong in a jurisdiction somewhere else, a lot of times it may be because it could be a lack of training that happened. It could be a lack of supervision. I mean, that's a big reason why we have supervision 24/7. If it's something that we need our social worker to respond because it's an imminent crisis, we've done that. You know, we've called her out for it. It doesn't happen too often, but a lot of times it comes down to your personnel and their ability to effectively resolve or manage an incident and de-escalate it. And, you know, knock on wood, we've done really well with that. I mean, we've had a really good track record with that. And, you know, it comes down to hiring the right people, training them properly, supervising them, having good policy, and involving the social worker when it's appropriate. There's times where it's not, and bringing that social worker in sometimes can create a more dangerous situation, because now I've got somebody else that you have to, somebody else's safety you have to account for.
Right. Good. Well, I just, I want you and the department to know that, you know, we as a council are mindful of that. And I certainly hope that you would, you know, bring it up if you feel like there's, you know, anything in terms of shifting of resources, or, you know, you need more resources or support, because, you know, I think that the national conversation has brought up what you guys have to do on a day-to-day basis frequently, or, you know, a week-to-week basis, that frequently flies under the radar as people think of what the police department does. So I know it's a really important part of the service that we provide to our residents, and certainly we can point to some pretty amazing successes you guys have had with de-escalating situations in the last year or two. So I'm grateful and recognize that. But I'm sure there are people in the community who are wondering about it. So I just want us to be able to talk about it and address it. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, do you have any insight as to what was causing or what is causing this outbreak of car burglaries? Is it I think earlier on there was at least a gang, or I don't know if gang is the right word for it. But we do seem to be having a whole lot of it going on.
I appreciate the question, Trustee Coladarchi. So just to reiterate, this is not a specific to Winnetka problem. It truly is a regional problem, and this is not new. It's been going on for every bit of 4 years, if not 5 years. And the reason, there's a couple reasons why, in my opinion. I mean, one, people make it easy for the crime to occur. When you leave your car in your driveway unlocked with your fob in it, and anybody can come in and take it.
Right.
And then, what happens is people are successful in doing it, and then they tell friends and word spreads. And the next thing you know, the North Shore gets the nickname of Candyland. That's what, when one offender was interviewed, they referred to the North Shore as Candyland, because you can go up there and get whatever you want, because people don't think anything happens, and they take the cars. The other issue, which is a much more complicated issue, is that sometimes when it's generally youthful offenders that commit these types of crimes, is that when they are caught and they are brought to the juvenile justice system, there's been frustrations, I can say, at least in Cook County that we're in, where the crimes are just looked at as property crimes versus something that's more serious. And a lot of times the offenders it's a revolving door, and they're released almost immediately, and they could go back out the next night and commit the same crime. So it's a combination of homeowners not taking basic steps to protect themselves, and a much bigger problem of the system itself, where, at least in my opinion, there's not enough accountability when offenders are caught, and the recidivism just perpetuates and occurs. I hope, does that answer your question?
Are most of these because they're juvenile cases, or a lot of the juvenile cases, do they head downtown? We don't deal with them at Old Orchard, right?
Correct. Our experience with these types of crimes are that the offenders are generally not local. They're from out of the area, and they're not easy crimes to. It's not easy to make arrests in these cases, because even when we do spot a stolen car, officers, and we've had this happen many times, officer tries to stop the car and they flee aggressively. We understand the dangers of pursuing, and when it's appropriate to pursue and when not to pursue. Risk management is a huge part of what we do. And they flee, and if it's a situation where it's a mere stolen car, we are not going to endanger the citizens of this community in a high-speed pursuit and take a chance of somebody getting hurt or killed because somebody left their keys in their car. So because of that, it is hard to catch people doing it.
But they also know that too. They know you're going to pursue.
Well, I mean, it depends on the jurisdiction, but we have a very strict pursuit policy, and again, if it's a property crime, we are not going to risk someone's life over a property crime.
I'm with you. I understand that, but I think that's part of the problem, because I've been talking to some of the CPD. There are certain situations where certain areas where they just know they can go in and take stuff because the police won't pursue. And so they all know that, and they know what they can get away with, and how fast they have to drive their car not to be pursued. So it's a tough dilemma.
And then if they do get caught, they're usually back out within 24 hours.
Would something like a CCTV system, I know you're working on this, but like a CCTV on Willow Road or other access points to the village provide any help whatsoever?
So, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds for, kind of exactly what we're looking to do, but I can assure you that there's been very recent conversations that have occurred at staff level to explore the use of technology to see what at least we can do as a village to try and deter this and give us some more tools.
Great.
I guess I've been watching too many British television cop shows where the CCTV covers everything, so.
It strikes me that about 20, 25 years ago, there were a lot of car thefts as well. I don't know if there was a blip back then as well, but, we just need to take the keys out of our cars and lock the doors. That would help you guys out a lot, right?
Real simple solution.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Penny and Chris. And the problem is people remember what it was like growing up in Winnetka, where you didn't lock not only lock your car, you didn't lock your door. And
Yep.
people have a hard time dealing with that now, but they have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions for Chief?
Great work. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
It's been a good year. You all have done a great job.
Thank you.
Oh,
Mark.
yeah. See a budget.
Thanks a lot,
Tough
Chief.
sale.
Before we promote and Carrie and Brian, thank you too for hanging around here and joining the fray. We really appreciate all you guys do. Kristen, you want to check and see if our visitor wants to have any comments or questions on the police presentation?
Our visitor did not unmute and has no comment.
Okay. Well, with that, Chief, thank you very much. We appreciate it all, and good job.
Good job.
Thank you.
It's always fun starting off with the police department. It's an easy one. We do the feel-good ones tonight.
Thank you all, and we definitely appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Thanks. See you later.
Steve,
Thank you all very much.
thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, the blood doesn't start until later. All right, well, next up, I believe, is the fire department presentation.
Yes, I'm working on the promoting and the shifting to attendee right now. Alan should be joining us shortly.
So we got Alan and John there, I see. What tab is this? 7.
7.
Hi, John.
Good evening.
Alan, we have to see your smiling face.
All right.
There he is.
I thought someone else was controlling it. I'm hoping you're talking about the blood next meeting, not right now.
No. Well, you never know, so don't stay on your toes until the presentation is done.
Well, are we ready to go?
It's all yours.
All right, just wait for the slides. Well, first of all, good evening. With me is Deputy Chief John Ripka. We'll both be presenting an overview of the 2021 Fire Department budget. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention Matt Timberberg and John, who assisted throughout the whole budget presentation process. And I do appreciate Trustee Dearborn giving me a heads up on our wish list while Chief Hornstein was talking. I was able to put together a nice list for later. So,
Yeah, Chief, that doesn't surprise me. You always have very expensive equipment.
Checkbook's open.
that's why we call it a wish list.
Yeah, exactly.
Slide, please. So the fire department is actually in a really good range right now for our mix of experience and age. And our org chart has not changed a bit in the last couple of years. Slide, please. So unlike this year, 2019 was a year of consistency. If you look at our numbers, it's really incredible. almost all within a short range of each other in both fire, EMS, and total responses. So 2019 was a pretty typical year for us. Slide, please. So our turnout and response time. Turnout is from the time we receive the alarm to the time we get out the door. I don't think over the last 3 years you can get much more consistent than 106. It's important to note that we expect them to be out the door during the day in 60 seconds, at night at 90 seconds. So this is a cumulative average of those two times. 4-minute response time is really incredible. Very proud of that. And dollar loss was really minimal last year. Incident types, again, very consistent over the years. We had a little uptick in false alarms, but nothing I'm really concerned about at this point. Slide, please. So for 2020, we had all sorts of plans. And in March of 2020, our focus was really COVID procedures, making sure that we're safe while we're taking care of the public and keeping them safe as well. Spent a lot of time almost daily dealing with our stakeholders as a village and as in the department, making sure everything is in place for a safe operation. Fortunately, we were able to do our hiring list and our promotional list during this time. Interestingly, the hiring list for candidates was done online as well for the first time ever, but it was very successful. The good news is in December, you approved us purchasing our station alerting system as part of capital for 2020, and we're able to get it installed in January. The bottom left picture shows a picture of that screen. It's really incredible. We get data as soon as the call comes in, we get the map, we get the location, we get the problem, and it's been very instrumental in the whole response process. We're working on reducing our ambulance billing fee, and we're able to negotiate a new rate from 6 to 4% of the amount collected, which is really good for a department of our size. We did replace our self-contained breathing bottles this year. They have to be replaced every 15 years because they only can do 3 hydrostatic testings. So they have all been replaced, placed our new ambulance into service, and we finally completed the renovation of our apparatus bay floor. The sad thing is we can't show it to anybody because no one's allowed in the station. But hopefully in 2021, we'll do our annual open house, and they really did a nice job on the floor. It looks great. All right, let's get back to consistency. Our budget, personnel, total services have been consistent over the last 3 years. I would like to point out we have a little bit of a larger increase than my partner in the PD, just for the record. Our budget is just slightly under $6 million. Slide, please. So one of the things I'm really proud of in this department is, unlike most departments, we have quite a good revenue source for a fire department. Most departments don't have this opportunity. We have our kennel work contract that pays us over $500,000 going back to 1930. We have unincorporated Cook County, $250,000, ambulance fees, radio alarm, fire inspections, which Village Manager Bayhan spoke about. And something we're hoping to bring to you in the next month or two is a training tower co-op. So this will be an IGA with Wilmette, Northfield, and Glencoe to use our training tower on a more regular basis with kind of a more cohesive training group. And they are going to pay us $25,000 over a 3 to 5 year period, depending on the municipality. This money will help offset some of the costs of the training tower repairs we're going to talk about in a little bit. So again, just another example of kind of looking at those IGAs and how we can kind of share our resources amongst the departments. And of course, false alarm. So for 2021, I'm anticipating revenues of just over $1.1 million. So that's really a nice amount. Slide, please. Goals and objectives. Probably should have put in continue to focus on COVID-19 and hopefully a vaccination in the near future.
Oops.
We are going to have to, we would like to replace our 22 self-contained breathing apparatus ear packs. So we replaced the bottles last year. We'd like to replace the ear packs this year. Deputy Chief Ripka is going to go into a little more detail on that. But this is truly probably one of the most important pieces of equipment that the firefighter uses in mitigating hazardous environments. We're hoping, planning to update our first aid and CPR AED training to all our village employees. And with that, we're also including fire extinguisher training. We'd like to add in 2021, 2 members to our Mavis Division 3 special teams, 1 on the dive team, 1 on the TRT team. And then finally, we've been using Firehouse software, that's the name of the software, for probably over a decade for sure, probably 15 years or so. And ESO has purchased out Firehouse, another software company, and they are no longer going to support Firehouse. So we're going to have to migrate to a new fire incident reporting and records management package in 2021. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Chief Ripka, who will go over our 3 capital improvement projects for 2021. John?
Sure, thank you, Chief. So like the Chief mentioned, I'll go over our capital projects for next year. Our first capital project is to make some repairs to our fire training tower. Our estimated costs, we're projecting about $120,000. We're looking to spread this cost over 3 years. So our next year, we're asking for $50,000 to start some of the major repairs that need to be done. This project was deferred from this year. It was originally to be in this year's budget, and we had deferred it as part of some of our COVID reductions. And as the Chief had mentioned, entering into the IGA with those 3 communities, each contributing $25,000 will also offset some of the future repairs and maintenance costs for our training tower. So our second capital project for next year, as Chief Rakowski had mentioned, we're looking to replace our SCBA air packs. Like he mentioned, it's probably one of the most important tools the firefighters use on a daily basis. Our costs to replace those are about $120,000. This tool we're looking to spread out over 2 years. So we were able to talk to the manufacturer. He agreed to supply us with all our 22 air packs that we need to replace next year. And we would pay them $60,000 of the $120 in 2021, and then the remaining $60,000 in next year's part of next year's capital 2022. And the reason we're looking to replace the air packs, our current air packs are 16 years old and are currently 3 standards, NFPA standards out of date. Recommended replacement on air packs is every 10 to 15 years or 2 NFPA cycles. In that time frame, the last 15 years, there have been significant safety improvements, communications, heat temperatures to the air packs. So it's be a nice thing to get into the mix here. We did try funding through a grant to cover the cost of the air packs. Unfortunately, we just found out last week that the grant was denied. So we're continuing on with replacing them through the capital project. And our last capital project for next year is we're looking to replace our utility pickup truck that comes with a snowplow on it. Estimated cost to replace that is about $60,000. Our current pickup truck is a 2007 Ford. We've just, over the last 3 years, we've just found it to start to become very unreliable, issues with starting, electrical suspension issues, numerous service requests on the vehicle. This vehicle is what we use at emergency scenes. Hydrant interns use this all summer long to do hydrant testing, use it for training. It's the vehicle we use to respond on special team callouts, so a dive callout or a hazmat callout. This is the vehicle that we respond in. We're able to put our stuff in the back of the pickup truck and respond. And in the winters, we use it for plowing the public safety building, the parking lots, the front ramps. Even on occasion, we've used it to clear a path for the ambulance on the way to a call when we've had really heavy, significant snowfalls. So that's the end of the fire department presentation. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to take those now.
All right, guys, questions for Alan or John?
You know, if you didn't set that building on fire all the time, it probably wouldn't need those repairs.
Good point.
I have a question on the grant. What was the reason why the grant was not approved? Is there any reason why or no?
It's based on a number of factors, but probably one of the second factor is need, demonstrating the need of the money. And there's a lot of departments that, you know, particularly in the rural areas, are struggling with a lot of their equipment. So from that perspective, I think, I don't think they denied us based upon the need of the equipment, but the ability to pay is probably the one that knocked us down a few notches.
Understood. Thanks.
I think the fire tower co-op, that's a grand idea. That makes a ton of sense. And I'm glad that any kind of upgrades to keep it safe will be taking place. What sort of experience have you all had relative to COVID calls? Have you had, you know, any been pressed into service relative to COVID?
So basically, when we were started in March, we were kind of trying to figure out who we should protect against and who and provide, go in there with the protection necessary. And then it was shortly thereafter, every patient is, we go in there with all our gear on just to protect the employee as well as the patient. So we assume that everyone we're dealing with could have COVID at this point.
Yeah.
One person goes in, so not everyone goes in at the same time. The person that goes in has the face goggles, shield, I should say, N95 mask, and the gown and gloves. And of course we've been dealing with it probably on a pretty regular basis.
You have been?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've had calls specific to that.
How have you guys been doing on PPE?
So we are doing okay. When this started in March, we had a bit of a supply. We have tapped all the resources. Actually, Cook County was very instrumental, and they actually used National Guards to deliver some of the PPE. Our resource hospital, St. Francis, has been very strong in that. And now we have a regular ordering process that my management analyst takes care of. And we try to keep a stockpile for the entire village at this point. And I think we feel pretty comfortable with what we have at this time that will carry us through at least the next 6 months.
Are there any other COVID related sort of safety measures that you feel like it would be helpful to bake into the budget, or that basically anything that you need that we haven't talked about?
So we, you know, I think just like every municipality, we're trying to figure out what the best are. We purchased 2 ultraviolet light machines that we move from room to room, and we zap them for 20 minutes, and they're very effective. I believe the village is looking at getting these air purifiers with ultraviolet lights that you can put in individual rooms. So we just upgraded many of our thermometers to wall thermometers instead of the gun style. So we're constantly looking. I know we are constantly looking at different type of masks, and it's a comfort thing too, because we want the employee to wear the mask. So one of the things we found was these plastic baskets you could slide into the mask, and it kind of pulls the mask away from your mouth. So I think we're doing okay. We got great support from finance on these purchases. And I really, and Kristen could probably answer better than but I haven't heard a lot of concern about us not providing what we need to provide to do our job.
Rob.
Oh, you're on mute, Rob.
Thank you. Sorry about that. On the fire tower, 2 questions. On the fire tower, are there any when we rent it out and let other people use it, which is great, I agree with Penny. Is there any liability issues for us on this if people?
So I think I took the most stringent approach to protect us by having Peter Freeman and Ben Schuster write up the agreements for the other municipalities. I think they read well. I think it covers our liability. And not only that, but if a municipality brings in somebody who's not an employee, there's a waiver for them as well that says this is dangerous. you assume all that risk. So I feel really good on the documentation to protect the village.
That's great to hear. I can't imagine many villages have fire towers.
There's a number, you know, Skokie has one, there's Wheeling has one, there's a number, but Wheeling has a kind of their own little co-op. They built it that way. I think this is, to be honest with you, when we floated this idea, I didn't know if I'd get buy-in or not. And we kind of wrote up a little sheet kind of telling them what the benefits were. And there was buy-in. And then, of course, the COVID hit and we kind of tabled it for this year. So I think it is a unique training thing, but what I'm really excited about is I mean, the revenue's good, but I'm more excited about the fact that we're training as one entity, because all these people who are buying into the training co-op are the ones that help us on the big events as well.
No, I think it's great thing.
So that was my question. So you all will be training together in post-COVID times, and not just having them use it.
Right.
Is that
So our
yeah.
plan is that a training officer from each department will meet once a month and coordinate the training amongst the departments.
Great.
So
Cool.
I'm really excited. I think it's really kind of a new idea and a creative idea, and I'm really excited that with our department's input, we were able to put something together like this.
That's great.
Awesome.
On the one other question on the SCBA air packs, are they in good working order?
So yes, we get them checked every year. I think, you know, and they are.
I'm not worried about the reason to buy new ones. I think I get it. I just didn't know what happens to those 12. Do we donate it to other areas that don't have them? Do we keep them as backup? I'm just curious what we do with those.
The problem is the manufacturer stopped supporting them after they're 3 cycles out of date. So even if we wanted to give them to another department, like we're having problems getting parts now. You know, they keep so many in stock and that stock's starting to run low. So we're having a hard time repairing the ones we have. So even if we were to give them to someone else, they'd be in the same boat we are.
Got it. Okay.
Other questions?
I just for the chief and deputy chief, I'd say, and we could have said this, and I think we did about the police department as well, public safety generally. I mean, these are 2 departments that, you know, I think our residents just have the highest regard for. And financially, we're going from a year where we're going from an estimate expenditures from 2020 to the budget actually being lower than the actual for 2020. I mean, if I'm reading that right, Tim. And I mean, for 2 departments that are working at such a high level and coming in at, you know, expenditures less than the prior year, it's remarkable. I'm just so impressed with you guys in terms of how you run your departments. Chief, you do a great job. John, you're doing terrific. So of course I have to go to my question, and that is, you know, what's on the wish list? I mean, you've talked in the past about drones, you've talked about marine equipment and so on. You know, what's out there that we don't have that makes us even better than we are today?
So I think, you know, and I have to reiterate what Chief Hornstein stated, you guys have been incredibly supportive of our operations. You know, we just purchased 3 cardiac monitor defibrillators in 1 year, which is just an incredible task. And to get that done, that was a big deal. I think, you know, supporting the apparatus replacement program was a big deal. That's a big commitment by the village. So I think we're doing okay, as we need things just like every other department who's has some needs. You know, we go through the process and, you know, we get support from finance and the village manager, and we bring it to you for your consideration. And again, it's really been a good process, and I'm very fortunate to be part of it.
Is our use of drones, Chief, right now as good as it can be?
No. So what's interesting is we just talked about purchasing a new drone that had thermal imaging capabilities and sound or voice loudspeaker capabilities. And if you guys probably won't necessarily see that except on the warrants list, because the drone that we originally purchased 5 years ago, John, was 20-something thousand. The new drone with more capabilities is like 5,000. So we are looking to go ahead and purchase that drone. I may reach out to the Foreign Fire to help us with that purchase. But we'll have 2 drones for 2 different purposes. And we have a licensed pilot again, which is a good thing. And one of my biggest focuses with the drone above everything else is just that water rescue. If we can get that drone to drop a flotation device, you know, half mile out to someone who's in trouble, it just makes life so much easier when you have those surface water rescues and you need immediate action. So that's really kind of my focus with the drone. The good thing with the thermal imager, though, is if you're missing a person, the thermal imager is a great thing at night to find that person just based on body.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
You bet.
That-
Absolutely.
It's a great
We
idea.
just saw it in Glencoe, so yeah.
Spot skunks while walking around at night.
You can call me, Andy. I'll have the drone follow you.
Andy's evening escort.
All those apple trees, all the apple trees.
They do
Oh
like,
my.
Alan, you forgot to mention the most important drone usage we're going to do in December. The
Uh-oh.
virtual tree lighting.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. That'll be a first.
I thought you were gonna track Santa Claus. Track him down.
Everybody get ready to duck.
Yeah, Chief, one last question. I probably asked you this last year too. Does, what is the percentage of your responses that Kenilworth makes up?
Kenilworth is, let me just check my notes here so I give you the accurate number. John, if you could find it before me, I would not be upset.
You guys can't find it, it's okay. I won't get really, mad.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I think I would say we go to Kenilworth probably on average, maybe, well, it varies from year to year, but I think it's usually around 150 to 200 times.
What's that as a percentage of your total response?
Yeah, it's under 10% for sure.
So it's not, so the amount of money we're getting from them does pay for your, I mean, they're paying for themselves.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. They are definitely covering their costs based upon our formulas. And I know it's in here somewhere, and I'd be happy to get it for you. I just can't seem to.
No, the end point of my question was just to, are we getting what we should be getting from Kenilworth for the amount of work we do?
Yeah, and they really have been a good partner in this process. It's been a good relationship, and it fits in well with our response model.
And Kenilworth's happy with the system?
I think they are very happy with the system. Yeah, they're getting top-notch service, and we also do their fire prevention, and we do their hydrants for them.
Alan, do you want to mention Kenilworth's contribution from their foreign fire service?
Oh,
funds?
yes, absolutely. So in the last 2 years, Kenilworth has, so they have a foreign fire fund too. And just recently they gave us $29,000 to buy one of the cardiac monitor defibrillators, which has nothing to do with the funding they provide us for our services. They also replaced all the carpeting. They have been end of last year in the fire station. So they paid for all the carpeting, and they paid for something else too, John. And then prior to that, they gave us a $80,000 towards payments from their foreign fire. So it's really been a good handshake with Kenilworth. I enjoyed working with them, and I think they appreciate the services they receive from the village.
Yeah. Thanks.
Other questions?
Nope, you answered
Rob?
them.
Rob has a question.
It's just an opportunity to thank Alan and John Since early this year, they've been an integral part of our COVID response, not only to the community, but internally to staff. They've really done an excellent job, and just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you publicly for all that work.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One thing I can
And
say
I'm
for
thrilled
sure-
that Kristen has taken over most of it now.
Way to go.
Well, I mean, it has been such a, obviously, we had no background, you all had no background, no really good blueprint. And I think the community has felt pretty good about how our community has been able to handle it and not panicked. And, it's, I think the village has made a good showing in this. So thank you all very much, truly.
You guys are doing an amazing job. And I hear from people all the time, just how appreciative they are of both police and fire, and just what a top-notch job you guys do. Always. I mean, it really is interesting when people just grab you on the street and you're having a chat about the village, and, whenever the fire department is mentioned, it's always in highest regards. So you guys just, whatever you're doing, just keep it up. One of these days, your approval rating will probably pass garbage pickup, but that'll give you something to shoot for in going forward,
I
okay?
think so.
You gotta have goals.
You gotta have a goal, right? You gotta have something to shoot for, so. All right, is the visitor left, Kristen? I don't see
Yes, the visitor has departed the meeting.
Oh, okay. Always nice to know somebody's out there lurking, but it would sure be nice to know who it is, just so we can
Yeah, I agree.
be engaged, but such as Zoom. Well, if there's no other questions for John, are we good with him?
Yep.
And Alan? Good, okay.
Thank you
thanks,
again.
John.
Again, we appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Truly, truly. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was a good warm-up. So we don't have any other business tonight, is that right, Rob?
This was the two departments with the introduction. So we took good notes, and we'll compare them, and we'll be following up on the questions that were raised.
Good deal.
Well,
I'd like-
I would just like to say thank you for the budget discipline. I mean, it's obviously given circumstances and having these budgets come in where they are without any pushing or anything. Thank you all very much. Obviously, there was a lot of leadership that went into that. So thanks a ton.
Welcome.
I'd like to point out that Trustee Dearborn's wish list questions was a clear ploy to get better service from the police and fire departments. I'm a little disappointed in Bob.
Right. No, I do not want anything to go on that wish list just between us kids. It's always good to ask the question.
He's got $1 million in ambulance and fire truck coming down the pipe, Bob, so.
Look at that. Look at those out years in the fire department.
Oh, yeah, that's true. 600,000 plus one year. Nice.
Yeah, and they'll be coming back to council for that in another year probably, right, Rob? It's about a 3 or 4 year build on those things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Once again,
No, they do a great job. They're terrific.
they're the best. So, well, great. Well, good work tonight, everybody. So at this point, we can just kind of shut things down. Time for adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Rob, roll call vote.
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
Trustee Swart,
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
Trustee Lampier.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next.
Thanks, everybody.